This goes together fairly quickly. I don't know if you can see inside the cockpit with the lighting here, but it's a very quick build. Cockpit tub, control column, 3 decals for controls and instrument, and then a seat, which I'm almost done with. And then the fuselage goes together. I skipped ahead in the instructions just to put the intakes together because I wanted to get a sense of, I wanted to be able to kind of test fit the wings to put them on there and just get a sense of how it was all going to go together so I could start planning some other steps of, hard points and pylons and stuff like that. It is a very simple model kit. Pretty good fit. I haven't had any major problems with anywhere that would need to be sanded or filled yet. These posts are a little bit long on the canards, so I'm going to have to trim just a little bit off. There we go. They stand off a little bit from the intake, so they need to be trimmed just a little bit to get them to sit flush. But you can position them; they move. I might trim the strake flaps so I can position them a little bit, like in an action pose. But yeah, construction's almost done on this thing already. It's a very, very simple kit. So I'm going to keep working on this and then start figuring out where we're going to put the extra parts, the hard points for everything. What I've been messing with in the last little bit is adding the hard points for the weapons. So nothing here is glued on. These are all just dry fit, and I noticed one of the problems we're going to have are these canards, because there's actually a small wingspan on this plane, as it was never really intended to carry a payload. It was all experimental. So we can't have anything that's going to interfere, as these are an all moving control surface. So I worked on getting these launch rails positioned perfectly on both wings, but we're going to have to be really careful when it comes to positioning anything else on the wings that might interfere with the canards. We can put some smaller pylons on there that would be for dropped ordnance like bombs, but it's really going to limit what we can put there. So I'm thinking maybe one more hard point right on that panel line for a bomb or something, and then we can put one center line sort of towards the rear, because if you look, the landing gear doors, they are pretty close, and I don't, they open downwards pretty close, and I don't know what's specifically going to fit there. So, it was never intended. This design was never intended to hold weapons. So we're really going to have to be creative with what we do here to arm it up. I did have an idea of making it kind of like, the idea of the F-16 originally was supposed to be a very simple day fighter only, about 2, 4, or 6 heat-seeking missiles only, no radar, a gun, and that is it. And this could follow the same model. Then I noticed we don't have any guns on this at all. So, what can we do for guns? I'll get to that later. I'll figure that out. I also went and cut off 0.5 millimeter of the post that was on this canard, because it was kind of sticking out dangly like so, and it was very floppy. 0.5 millimeter was just enough to get it to sit flush against the intake, and that also helps it sit kind of not moving if we don't want it to, and gives us the option to position it. I probably, in the end, will glue it down. I think I'm going to do like kind of an action pose, as if, I imagine when hydraulics and power is off, it would sit kind of heavier to the rear, like, if again, referencing F-16s, the stabilators in the back, when everything's off and there's no power, they tend to kind of fall downwards a little bit. So, still lots of options and lots of planning on what we're going to do here. All right, so let's talk about solutions for our stores. So I still have the Lao 129s that are gonna, normally they'd be for dual AMRAM Sidewinder usage. Okay, they're actually a little too late era for this, but we're fudging it because we had them, so we're gonna use them. So I'm gonna go with AIM-9 mics for this because I have them. I don't want to go too fancy with AIM-9Xs. I want to give this a little bit of a late 90s kind of feel. I want it to represent the era where it actually flew. So I have our 4 launch rails. And I wanted to give it more. I wanted to beef it up a little bit, but you're just so limited to what this thing can, the spaces where you can mount stuff and still have it be sort of semi-realistic. So we'll have the 9 mics on the wingtip rails. And then I was like, you know what? We're going to go with sparrows, because when else am I going to use sparrows? Unless I'm doing an actual realistic project that fires AIM-7s. So we'll do some AIM-7s on the inner rails. Now I mounted the center line there, and I did test with wheels and with landing gear doors. It will perfectly mount a short ALQ 184, which again is kind of fudging timelines a little bit. The shorty pod probably would not be available when this thing was flying. I could mount a 131, but I love the look of the short ALQ 184. I hate to be this geek, but if you know the capabilities of the 184, actually what it can do anyway, it's an awesome pod. Air-to-air and air-to-ground wise. But it fits perfectly, and it looks like, it's a great size for this plane, too. And I just happen to have it, so it's going to go on the center line, and it's just going to fit perfectly with the rear wheels and everything. Now, I still wanted to sling some bombs on this guy, and I was worried about how to do that. Because the considerations were clearing the wheels and, of course, the size on the wings and these control surfaces. So in one of the Hasegawa weapon sets, what actually had were these adapter racks that would fit on to a Tomcat, on where the center line AIM-54s would go to allow it to carry bombs. And it just so happens that they fit really well with these CBU-87s to go right there. And this is another place we're going to have to fudge, because, this would restrict a little bit of movement with these control surfaces. A little bit. They'd still be able to hinge downward a little bit. I don't know how downward they flap, but it's going to let us carry 2 of these anyway. Why am I using these? Well, frankly, because anything else is just too big to get away with sticking into the arc of movement for there. But it'll let us throw 2 air-to-ground weapons under the wings. And, back in the day, cluster bombs were still kind of fair game, still widely used in the time frame that we're modeling this, so we can legitimately use them. So now that we have kind of the stores picked out, ready to go forward with the rest of the plan. I got the decals in, and this is wonderful. This is one of the dangers of buying on eBay. So they are excellent decals. They are, everything's in great register, bright and colorful and everything, lots of options, but that's it. No instructions, no information on them whatsoever. So we got full stenciling in the subdued and full color for F-16s. Lots of options, some great shark mouth options available, all sorts of stuff. Unfortunately, I'm pretty familiar with F-16s and everything, but I don't know all their markings. So I was looking up references, and then I came to find out that what I had purchased was a ripped-off counterfeit set of Speed Hunter graphics USAF Vipers decals. So I have actually ordered the real thing in 1/48 scale, because I will use them. It's not like I won't use them, but at least it'll give me the proper instructions and marking, options. Lots of options for dressing this up and making it, whatever the hell we want. So that's pretty cool. And the stenciling will let us just kind of cut and paste, and whatever fits, we'll be able to do that. I don't have a HUD that will fit there. I thought I had one that would work. It's too big. And quite frankly, I don't have anything that's going to fit in there. So you know what? We're going to go without the HUD. It's such a small scale anyway. We're going to have to do without it. So I am going to go forward with getting the canopies pieces mounted on there. The forward windscreen permanently. The canopy piece temporary, because we're going to permanently display it open, attached to the back of the seat with the actuator like the kit comes with. But for painting and marking and everything, we're going to have it part of the whole build, make it easier and make it kind of seamless with the whole thing. And with that, I guess it's ready for a little wipe down with some alcohol, looking for any last minute parts that need to be filled and sanded, but it's a really smooth kit. Doesn't really need to be. And we can get priming to get this paint job underway. All right, so I made a couple changes since the last time we saw the plane before painting. I was going to paint, and then I realized I need to do a couple things. Now, I wanna recognize right now, this is one of the sloppiest pre-shading jobs ever. I have never done one this small. I even use the smallest needle in the airbrush. I need to get a much finer control airbrush if I'm going to do these kinds of projects. But you know what? As sloppy as it looks, it's going to be okay, because I can clean it up when I paint. I used this stuff, which I love, as a black anything, because it airbrushes really smooth, but it flows so well that when you're doing such small stuff, it was a little hard for me to control. But what I did was I realized, if this is actually going to be a combat aircraft, and I don't know if you can see it here, I had to take some small plastic rod and I had to drill some recesses and holes to give it the twin 20 millimeter cannon barrels that an F5 would have. If this is based on an F5, it needs guns because it's a combat aircraft. I also sanded and filled all of the little panels around this nose, and I use this panel line that you can't even see now as this is where the radome would be, because if it's a combat aircraft, it needs a radome, it needs a radar, and the X-29 had none. So I gave it an actual radome by filling all this in, and so we'll paint that, and now it's actually ready for painting. So based on the decals that I decided I'm going to use, I had cut one of these little shark mouths out, and that's the one I'm going to use. It's a Spangdahlem bird from the late 80s, and well, I had cut it to fit, and believe me, it fits right there on that panel, right up against the radome perfectly. And it's going to look really cool, because when does a shark mouth ever not look cool? I have to figure out where that one cut decal went, because now it's not here. So I'll find it. But we're going to be doing the older 3-color paint job for an F-16 on this plane. And normally when I do FS colors, I use Model Master. Usually acryl. I like painting with acrylics. But when I was shopping the other day in a particular store, I saw this set, and I decided I was going to pick it up and try it out, because I really like Vallejos also, and Model Air is pretty good for airbrush. So this has all of the different grays that you might need for Air Force aircraft from different time frames and everything. So the ones we're going to be using to do the 3-color, and it's hard to, if you don't know what you're looking for, it's hard to spot it, but we've got light ghost gray on the bottom. We've got a medium gray on the forward area and the vertical, and then we've got gunship gray on the upper surfaces. Well, here it is. You can see how I really was able to tone down a lot of those very rough pre-shade lines by using the paint rather effectively. Pretty proud of myself there. So it looks like a warplane now, and not just some kind of test. I hand painted some of the panels and some little access panels to give a different look. I wanted it to look like something that was used, like an actual flown plane. I decided this is how I'm going to have the canards positioned when it's all done, but if I let them sit kind of in a neutral position, you can see the paint job flows nicely to all of them. And I did a little bit of hand painting on the rails, just to, I didn't feel like masking and spraying, so I just brush painted them. But we are looking good, and we're ready for some of the last little bits that are going to go on before the gloss coat for the decals. There's a couple small little things. I want to give a metallic look to the pitot tube and the strakes over there, gun barrels, a couple other little things here and there, the exhaust, and got to touch up the whites of the gear bays there, and these gear, because they got sprayed with a little bit of gray, but overall it's looking pretty good, and I'm pretty happy with how it's turning out. The difference in the gray between the dark gold gray and the medium gray is not as pronounced as I would have hoped, but it is what it is. We have a plane ready for decals now. I did a little experiment with this guy, so I wanted to try this gauzy glass coat because I use the gauzy intermediate often, which I guess is intended for, a glossy clear coat. This is, it says glass coat. It's intended for you to dip your clear parts in, kind of like what I would normally do with fuchsia, floor wax or something, to give it a, make it look clear, make it look like real glass, something like that. I wasn't sure if it would, work like a regular clear coat. It says glass coat. So I tried to airbrush it, and it actually, if you can see below the clear, it's got a little bit of an orange peel look. So that stuff's not meant to be sprayed, I guess. I tried it different pressures, different ways. It didn't come out well. What also happened, because I forgot that these wings tend to curve inwards, this started to settle into that crevice where the wing and the body joins. So it kind of was not a great. It's not meant to be airbrushed like that. It doesn't dry right away, quickly anyway. So I ended up just top coating it again with one of the tried and true, works really well, Alclad clear gloss. So anyway, we're ready for decals now. I have wheels mounted so it sits nice and flat, if I want to put it down while I'm working on stuff, and we're ready to go. So we're rocking and rolling with decals on this guy. So one small thing that I didn't realize at first. Now here's the 148, the actual Speed Hunters decal set compared to the Chinese knockoff 172 version. Having this, number one, makes me feel not so bad for buying a ripoff. But number two is really useful for when I'm looking for, some of these decals are tiny. So I've been using this, not only the instructions for a good reference, to put them on, but also when I need to find the little tiny decals, I can reference it on the big sheet, find out where it is, and then go back and cut it on the little one. So it really has been helpful, not only to really get a good visual in a better size of what the decals actually look like, because some of them you can hardly see, but to find them and see them, in terms of mapping out where they all are before I cut them. So this has been really good. I'm glad I bought the 148 scale set, and yes, I definitely will use them later. Has a great, not that I don't have other references for stencils on F-16s, but it has a great stencil reference as well. And that's kind of where we're at. We're done with the specific markings. One of the weird things is, of course, I picked the only jet where you had to paint the tail flash on yourself. And I don't know why that is, that we had to do that. So far, the decals actually, though, from this whatever Chinese brand, I can't remember, have been pretty good. They've worked well. They've reacted really well to Microsol and Solvaset, because I use a 1-2 punch there. They're crisp and clear. They're not, there's a few little register problems as I go that I've discovered. A couple places, like in the national insignia, you'll see there's a little off, but it is what it is at this point. Switched gears for a little bit to work on weapons. as the decaling is coming along very nicely and it's just about done. So preparing the next step. This is a tremendous pain in the rear to get all the painting done. There's a lot of very tiny masking that goes on to get the trim tabs and the everything done on these AIM 9Ms. Not so hard to do the AIM 7s, painting some fins and nose. These really just need one little extra color down that rib right there, and this one's so hard. A little hard painting late at night just to get the dielectric panels done and then some touch-ups with the gray. But the sidewinders, these are little sons of bitches. So I've got just one more to get finished, then I can gloss them all, decal them, regloss, and then do some panel line washes and just pick out a few more little details, and then they'll be ready to stick on as we get the plane a little bit further along. Alright, 1/72 scale weapons are one of the most frustrating things to me in the world of modeling, but they're done. Look at how tiny these guys are. But we've got decals, we've got, so they're looking good. What I need to do now, I'm just holding them with the tweezers to make them, dramatize how small they are. What I need to do now is give them a little bit of a wash, some panel lines and stuff. I got my ALQ 184 Shorty ready to go. I got my 2 cluster bombs. So I'm going to get the planes, well, I'm going to give them another coat of, I think, Microsol to help some of the decals just settle down a little bit. Going to give them a little bit of some washes, just a panel lines, lines and just a little bit of a wash with some enamels real quick. And then I'm going to put them to the side. They're going to be, attached when everything else is done here. We do have some more to work on. Trimming the walkway stencils was kind of a hassle to get them sitting just right, but it looks great on the plane. I have a little bit more just general stenciling work to do on the aircraft itself. Then we can get a little bit of wash going on in the landing gear bays. We still have lots of panel lines and washing and stuff to do on the aircraft itself, but we're getting there. We're getting near the end of this thing, and I'm really, I've said this before, I'm really happy with the way this is turning out. I just wish it was on a larger scale. I decided to just go simple and leave the decals. It's such a small plane, and we're playing with a plane that doesn't really exist. Just leave them simple. And I gave another gloss coat so we could start some panel lining. So panel lining for this thing, we're going to use 2 different ones. I'm going to use MIG Blue Black for the upper surfaces, and I'm going to use Tamiya Dark Gray for the lighter undersurface. And I've already started that a little bit. And they're all enamel, so you see we can not only do the panel lining, but we can do some nice weathering as we go. I decided I wasn't happy without an actual HUD being in this aircraft, so I'm just taking, this is a 1/72 scale F-16 canopy that I have, and I'm using this little HUD as a model, and I'm going to use this extra piece of plastic. And I've just been sanding it down to get it a little bit thinner, and I'm going to end up just snipping a little piece off, and I'm going to make a HUD for the plane out of it. Once I get it really buffed out a little bit more, I'm going to dip it in gauzy just to make it nice and clear and give it a nice shine, and then I'll paint it kind of a clear green, just something we're going to add at the end. Panel line work is done here. Landing gear is attached. These are still free floating. They need to be attached in their final positions, but what we're going to do first is we are going to give another light gloss coat. I think I want to give the leading edges of the canards a metallic finish, just one more thing to look at, draw your eye to. Then we are going to attach weapons. Once we're done with that, then we still have a little bit of work to do inside the cockpit. We've got to put the seat in. We've got to put the mechanism for the canopy in. And then we'll be ready to give a full satin coat. We've got our semi-gloss finish done. It's looking great. We are up to my favorite part, which is unmasking the clear. I love unmasking the clear parts. We have our seat. We got to finish our seat. I've already assembled and attached the canopy actuator to it. So we've got a little painting to do there. I've got some tape right here that we're going to make some straps out of because the seat doesn't come very detailed at all. So we're just gonna work on that a little bit, and then we'll attach our canopy. I've assembled the crew ladder so that we can put it there. Now, what's really nice about this is that it kind of hangs on its own. So it won't stay there for very long. It's easy to knock right off, but that way we can decide to put it on there or not, because it kind of covers up some of the decals and everything that go on there. So we'll paint that up. So first thing is painting this and then mounting the canopy to it. And before we do that though, we'll finish painting the seat and making these straps to add a little detail to the seat. here we go. She's finished. She's looking great. I love this. I'm totally happy with the way this came out. Let's see if I can get this without the ladder falling off. Ladder's very simply done in a yellow chromate with some heavy dry brushing of steel just to make it look very used. And it is still removable. It just hangs on there. But this aircraft is done. And it was fun. It was a little labor intensive at parts. I of course will do full, pictures all around at the end of the video. I still wish that it was in a larger scale. I would love to do a 1/48 scale, the exact same project, just in a larger scale. But one of a kind model. What if this thing had been a real American fighter plane instead of just an aerodynamic test bed? Would have looked pretty cool, I have to say. Final steps that you saw in the fast forward, did some silver followed by transparent colors for the navigation lights. Again, one more time on a larger scale plane. There might have been some more small details to get to just to do it. I don't know if I had mentioned this or not, but this had strake flaps. So I had just cut them and positioned them, like they were functioning here. I thought about doing the whole trailing edge flaps, but I thought that between the canards and the strake flaps, that would be enough sort of movement to illustrate a little bit of life in the plane. Hopefully with the pictures, I will get to show what that cockpit looks like a little bit with the decals, the HUD. That I'm really happy with the way that came out. I mean, it's a simple little addition, but I'm happy with it. I'm really happy with the way the straps brought a little bit more life to the seat. Just the simple, just the simple act of just the simple act of making a little cut and gluing a flap in a down position, or taking the canard and putting it. I know originally I said I was going to put it, heavy to the rear, but I really like the way it looks angling down forward. But just doing that really brings so much life to a model. If you go by an actual military flight line, if you go by an actual active flight line, you're going to see all sorts of aircraft with different control surfaces in different positions as the planes are just lined up there. Very rarely do you see them all with everything just in a dead steady flat position. So doing that really adds something, in my opinion anyway. Weapons are looking really good. A little bit of weathering going on, just a little bit to show an aircraft that's cared for but used. Remember that the time frame we're modeling this plane, it would be used, but it wouldn't be used in continuous combat operations the way that our aircraft are now. So they'd be a little cleaner, a little more well-maintained, but still have some use from training cycles and everything. I'm really thrilled with the way this thing came out. So I hope you guys enjoyed the process. I'm ready. I'm expecting a little bit of criticism for this isn't possible or that wouldn't work or whatever. It's a flight of fancy. It's a bit of whimsy. It is a what if. It's some of the stuff that we did here probably would not be theoretically possible, but we're saying what if, It would take a lot of modification to turn an experimental aircraft into a real combat aircraft. But I think it's a pretty damn good-looking finished product. So, will I keep this one or will I sell it? I don't know. I often, I sell not only planes that are, models that I'm commissioned to do, but I sell a lot of the finished product just because I don't have shelf space for a lot of them. So. I'm not sure. I really like this one, though. I think I'll probably keep this one around for a while. It came out really, really nice. So I would love to hear your comments, though, on not only the finished
airplane, but the process going through it, the ideas, especially ideas that you guys have that you might have put into play or that you would have wanted to see going through this whole thing to produce this. So thank you all for watching and hanging out with me for this process. And I hope you'll join me for the next project soon.